I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, it's Saturday. Let me do a quick kind of investing mindset, a positive affirmation blog here. These are the ones that I enjoy doing the most. It's been a couple of years since I've done this one. I've probably done 3 or 4. This one's going to be called, the common traits of successful people, or the common habits of multi-millionaires. And the last time I did one of these was a couple of summers ago. So we're due for one here, because they all have, most successful people, pretty much all successful people I know, including myself, all kind of follow these rules and have these traits or habits in their life. So I'm going to give them to you here. And we'll keep it fairly simple. I want to try and keep this to under 5 minutes here. But successful people, multi-millionaires, all have multiple revenue streams. And again, I've talked about this. I'll give you examples from myself here. So yeah, I've always had multiple revenue streams. Even as a teenager, I had multiple odd jobs and I had side ventures and things that I invested in and everything else. So for me, keep it simple, I've got probably 7 revenue streams, some bigger than others, but my main one, of course, is my career as a working realtor. That's my main source of income. I've been in this business a long time, built up a big client base. I work hard. I tell people I get up at 5:30 every morning, go to bed at 9 or 9:30. I love my job, love my career and helping people. It's a challenge for me every day, which is what makes it interesting for me. There's no 2 days of the same. So that's my main source of income as a working realtor. But I've also got a couple of other big sources of income that have taken me many, many years, decades to build. But when you get to my age, hey, it becomes quite the gravy train, trust me. But my main ones are my rental portfolio. I've got a fairly large, as you guys know, rental portfolio, properties I bought over the years. I started 34 years ago. I talk about it in my book. I bought a simple 1-bedroom condo in Richmond near SkyTrain. SkyTrain wasn't around back then. I still own that condo today. And then over the years, I've systematically bought more homes, townhomes, detached homes along the way. A few I've sold along the way, but for the most part, I just simply buy and hold. And that's the secret. I don't time markets. Whenever, as I went along here the last 33 or 34 years, when I first started out, my father was my realtor. And, I would save my money, bought my first place, and then I would, work hard. Another 3 or 4 years later, I would have enough money. I'd call my dad up and buy another one. I did not care one iota about what the market conditions were at that time. And I pounded this home. It could have been a buyer's market, a seller's market, or a balanced market. It didn't matter to me. All that mattered was as I got pre-approved again for another mortgage, I had another $50K down payment, call up my dad, let's get something going here. The reason I didn't care about the current market status, whether it was a buyer's market or a seller's market, is because I was an investor. I was going to buy the property, put a tenant in it, let my tenant do all the heavy lifting, and keep it for 20, 30, 40 years. What the market did next year or the year after that was a little concern to me. And this is something my dad always pounded home. And it's the same thing I've always done too in my retirement accounts, in my stock investing. I just buy good quality companies and systematically buy, or I index invest. And that's my second large source of income. Third source of income is my stock portfolio, my retirement accounts and my cash accounts. I buy good quality dividend paying equities that pay me a quarterly dividend, although some of them pay me a monthly dividend. And I just continue to reinvest those cash flows. So once I accumulate $3,000 or $4,000 from dividends every month, I'll just go out and buy some more shares of another company that's on my watch list. I talk about it in my book. Starts off slow, you don't notice much, but after about 10 or 15 years, if you've systematically built up that portfolio, before you know it, you're earning $40,000, $50,000 a year off that investment portfolio. Just to keep it simple, if you have $1 million, let's say, in a balanced portfolio of Canadian and US equities, we're talking Apple, Johnson & Johnson, Royal Bank, TD, Bell Canada, TELUS, Costco, a good mix of growth companies that are growing the dividend fairly quickly, might be a lower yield, and then some old stalwarts like the banks or an AT&T or a Bell Canada. You could easily be getting kind of an average yield or dividend yield on that of maybe 4%. So if you build up $1 million portfolio, you're going to generate $40,000 a year in dividends every year without doing a thing, 100% passive. And keep in mind, most of the companies I own are what's known as dividend growers or dividend aristocrats. These are companies that not only pay you a dividend, but have a long track record of increasing that dividend every year. My annual growth rate on the dividend in my portfolio runs about 7 or 8%. So in other words, if they pay me, just keep it simple here, $10,000 today, this year, next year I'll be getting $10,700. Every year they're increasing that dividend. So working income, my investment income through my rental properties, and investment income. Those are my three major sources of income. But I also have a whole bunch of others. I've got other small little ventures that I invest in. I've got my YouTube channel here that generates revenue for me. I've got my book sales that generate revenue for me. So I've got multiple revenue streams. That's one of the main things that successful people generally have. They don't work 9 to 5 for a paycheck. You can, that's your one source. But they get side hustles and they get their money working. And that ties into, they don't save their money. Successful people, multimillionaires, don't save, they invest. And especially these days, it's a recipe for disaster to be getting into any type of fixed income, bonds, or savings accounts. Outside of your emergency fund, you should be setting aside, experts will tell you anywhere from 3 to 6 months' salary should go into a savings account as an emergency fund. After that, you do not want to be anywhere near interest-bearing vehicles of any sort because you're earning nothing on these. You're earning 25 basis points, 1/4%, and inflation's running at 2.5 or 3. And you're fully taxed on that. You need to get your money invested. The best ways, of course, are using a bit of leverage. I know that's taboo for a lot of people. Best way to use leverage is with a residential mortgage. Buying your principal residence, buying an investment property, putting 20% down, borrowing the other 80% at 2% interest rates, and buying good quality dividend paying equities or just simply index invest. Buy the S&P 500. One that I like right now is the iShares Canadian High Dividend. XEI is the ticker symbol on that. It's yielding 6% right now. It holds 70 companies. The majority of the fund is held in 20 large cap Canadian dividend payers. Excellent way, and matter of fact, I'll do another blog on this later. XEI might be where I suggest a lot of young people keep their emergency fund because the interest rates now are they're just a pittance. It's almost criminal to be putting your money into savings accounts right now. Third thing, they know, successful people, multimillionaires, understand the tax code. And I've done several blogs on this. I talk about it in my book as well. You better learn this stuff. Taxes are so incredibly boring. And I'm not telling you to become an expert on taxes. Hire an accountant for that. I've had several over the years, but I pay a premium for my accountant. And once you get to a certain level, you want to have a good accountant. But at the very least, you need to go onto a site like Seeking Alpha or go onto a site like Canadian Couch Potato and go into the tax section. Go onto Google. Google Canadian tax rates. Spend 10, 15 hours just to learn the basics. You have to. I know it's dry and boring, but you need to know how things like the principal residence exemption works. Best tax shelter we've got. You need to learn how the Canadian dividend tax credit works. Again, incredible. Use it. You need to know how you're taxed at the various levels, provincially and federally. You want to learn how RRSPs work and the deductions you get. TFSAs and how those work and how you can shelter growth. And then, of course, with the TFSA, all that money that you have got in there comes out tax-free. You've got to learn the basics of taxes, and it can't be spoon-fed. You can't go onto my blog and ask detailed questions about taxes. I won't give it to you. You have to spend the time. 10, 15 hours will get you the basics. After that, that's all you need. Then hire a good accountant. Especially when you start moving up the income ladder. You need that. You have to know how these things work. They use leverage. Again, I've done many blogs on leverage. Learn the basics about how leverage works. The best way to access leverage is through residential mortgages. and especially when you're paying 1.8, 1.9%. Leverage is the wealth creator. I don't know of anybody, any of my successful clients or mentors, that would be able to create anywhere near the current wealth they have without using leverage. I'm in that same boat. I've got multiple mortgages out. I've always had at least 5 or 6 mortgages over the last 15 years. But there's a big difference between good debt and bad debt. You tell someone, hey, you got 6 mortgages out. Wow, you've got a lot of debt. The debt is manageable, and I'm using the leverage. And there's a huge difference there. Huge. Learn how leverage works. In Canada, as I've often said here, you cannot over leverage with the Canadian banks. They will not let you. You're going to need conventional mortgages all day. You might even need to put down 30 or 35%, depending on your income. And then keep in mind, after 10 years, you're probably going to have 200, 300, 400K of equity in that property. You are not over leveraging there, but learn the stuff for sure. Next thing, all successful people I know, all my mentors, all my friends, all the people I associate with, all the people I've ever associated with, ever pretty much, that I've become friends with, are positive, optimistic people. I've done so many blogs on this. This started back in my days working out in the gym, competing in bodybuilding, doing fitness magazines. I was always around type A personalities, driven, optimistic people. And once you're around those people for a while and you start at a young age, that's all you ever know. That's all I've ever known. Started with my dad, branched out to some of my mentors. Everyone that I know and associate with is positive and optimistic. It's the only way to be in life. Stop listening to these doom and gloomers on YouTube and reading these ridiculously dumb articles in these mainstream media, painting you a picture that everything is doom and gloom, the sky is falling and everything else. There's always going to be dark clouds in the world, always. But I'm telling you that there will never be a point ever where it'll all be sunshine and roses. It's never going to happen, ever. 34 years I've been a real estate investor. I've never known a time where there wasn't all kinds of doom and gloom articles. Yet have a look at what the Vancouver real estate market has done over the last 30 years. It's basically looks like Mount Kilimanjaro. However, as I've always have to paint here, I am not a blind optimist. I tell you that there's always going to be downturns. Expect a downturn in the Vancouver real estate market every 2 to 3 years of at least 10%. Expect something more major every decade, 20, 30%. In the stock market, hey, look what we've just gone through here. I've done several blogs on it. If you're following me on Twitter, I've done a full report on the stock market on my Twitter, what I've bought, what the markets were doing. You have to get comfortable with this. If you want the superior returns and you want to become a multimillionaire, then you're going to have to take on leverage. You're going to have to get your money invested. And to do that, you are going to have some ugly, ugly years. Again, I've talked about this so many times. There's a lot of newbies that come to my site that think I'm some blind optimist and that real estate only goes up. Well, you obviously have never watched very many of my blogs. I always paint both sides of it here. I've had years where my stock and real estate portfolio, every year I usually go to Hawaii or someplace warm, sit on a beach and I review, I've told people this, I kind of recap my year, my stock portfolio, my real estate portfolio, my business, how many ends, sales I've done, everything else. I've had many years where I've sat on the beach in Hawaii. My stock portfolio is down 300 or 400K from what it was the previous Christmas. And my real estate, which I don't pay too much attention to on the day-to-day prices, because who cares? I'm not selling the properties, but they're down probably 5 or 10% too. But that's par for the course. The next year, chances are it's going to be up 400 or 500K. That's what you have to sign up for if you want long-term success. Otherwise, you're going to be relegated to putting your money in a coffee can or putting your money in a savings account, earning you zero. It's nuts. Learn this stuff. Final few things here. Positive people, successful people, multi-millionaires, they only focus on things they have control over. They're aware of the dark clouds. They're aware of the economy and the COVID and the pipeline issues and the Chinese trade and interest rates and all those other things, but they never let those kind of things control their overall strategy. And I get a lot of people that will often say, and it's a nice compliment and I appreciate it. They say, "Owen, I've been watching your blog for 10 years. And the thing I like about you is you've never changed your attitude or your outlook. It's always the same. I'm consistent." And yeah, I've been like this not just for 10 years, I've been like this for 35 years. This is what all successful people have. They have a strategy, a game plan, and they think long term. They could care less about the day-to-day things that go on in the real estate market, condo inventory going up, interest rates going, mortgage deferrals. It's all garbage. You're just wasting your time on this stuff. You have no control over it. And this is probably what sets most people back. This is what kills most people's dreams. They start listening to people and focusing on short-term things that are come and go. And they don't realize that most of this stuff is clickbait. That's all, you're being fooled. This is clickbait. They throw these negative things out because that's what gets them the clicks, which earns them the dollars on YouTube or online. You know, mainstream media is pretty pathetic these days. It's not what it was 20 years ago. These days, the internet has pretty much killed subscriptions and newspapers and magazines. Now it's online, and how they get paid is through clicks. They're not going to get you clicking if you give them a positive message about stay the course, buy and hold, because that's boring. They're going to get you with the negative stuff. Most of it you can ignore. Stick to the program. The program is buying quality real estate, buying equities, all the things I just laid out here, the leverage and everything else, and then sticking to the program, holding them. Don't worry about what the market does in the short term. The final thing I'll just leave you with, and I've touched on this before, most successful people, again, pay very little attention. They don't watch the news, that's for sure, very little. What they do is like what I do. They choose what they want to watch and listen to. I use a lot of podcasts and things. So I would never watch the generic news. I follow certain podcast blogs and I subscribe to several newsletters. Everything from Wall Street Journal to Barron's. I'm only getting in the information from reliable sources. And I use it, a lot of my downtime, not so much anymore because I'm getting older and hey, I like entertainment. But in the early years, a lot of my mentors used to say, successful people and multi-millionaires and people that are moving up, focus on learning and getting better as opposed to entertainment. Entertainment being, playing a lot of video games, watching a lot of movies, that kind of stuff. Hey, listen, that stuff can be fine. Do some of those things. You don't want to be working and concentrating on making money and all, because money's not the end all. You need some downtime in your life. But when you're in your 20s and 30s and 40s, I would suggest you do like I did and put a lot of your spare time towards getting better, reading books, learning. And these days, you've got a huge leg up than what I started. Nowadays, with the podcast, you can join Spotify for $10 a month. You've got access to so much incredible information and learning now that I never had access to 20 or 30 years ago. So focus on that. Focus on trying to get better, for sure. Spend a little time on downtime and entertainment. You need to. But try and focus on getting better. That's what successful people do. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.